Thank you so much for joining the second of these micro webinars on analytics, AI and automation in telcos. The slide today looks at current automation hotspots across a typical telco and asks an important question. Where should telcos focus their automation efforts beyond those initiatives seen today? To start off by briefly explaining the very busy diagram, and please note it would be possible to download a copy of the diagram and summary of what I'll say today, so don't feel that you have to take screenshots or notes. The diagram describes the benefits of analytics, AI and automation, described as A3 today, for a telco going forwards. I have an ongoing spreadsheeting exercise which breaks down a typical telco into 250 of its largest processes and considers where A3 is likely to bring benefits in future. The columns I hope are self-explanatory, and then as I went through the processes I began to notice similar types of problem needing to be solved popping up in different places, and these problems typically need the same types of resolution from A3. So the first row includes processes which are classic big data problems. The next row is groups of processes that most in need of automations. Row 3 is groups of processes that need to understand customers in order to serve them better, typically grouped under personalisation. There are classic planning problems which require forecasting and optimisation in row 4. And then row 5 and 6 includes processes which typically include more artificial intelligence, things like natural language processing. So having described the diagram, let me talk about the colour coding. The graphic categorises the different operational functions of a telco into, shall we say, the complexities of implementing automation. It also ingests some more work that I do not have time to describe today if I wish to keep to 5 minutes, which assess the potential of return on investment of these projects. The coloured bullet points in the diagram identify those areas which have mostly straightforward automations and also higher financial benefits, versus those areas which either have less need for automation or which are likely to see less return on investment. Those are bullet points with no colour. Then you will see some bullet points which are in text, and the text is in bold and uppercase. These are where telcos are most active today, and going through them, we have automations on the network in the top left hand of the diagram, tied with the increasing complexities of deploying 5G and requiring automations in network management and assurance to effectively manage multi-vendor, multi-domain hybrid networks. Moving down a little, automations of the order-to-cash cycle for new digital products, but particularly in future low-margin, high-volume IoT, showing us needing things like zero-touch order handling, fulfillment and automation in unassisted care channels. 3. Improvement in customer and agent experience via automations in the contact centre, shown in the assisted care box in the middle of the diagram. And then lastly, marketing automations for campaign delivery as per the owned channel box. The next logical question is, outside of areas already being worked on, where do additional automation projects make sense both financially and practically, because they are relatively simple to create? An analyst friend introduced me to the Seinfeld framework, and the diagram uses its descriptions of the complexity of decision making in order to further the complexity of automation in the diagram. So boxes which are coloured are considered to have good potential return on investment, and then the colour denotes the complexity of the automations needed. An area is considered simple if there are existing rules in place around decisions that have to be made, situation is stable, and relationships between cause and effect are clear. This allows rules-based automation for decisions which are presented to each of the automations. Operational areas in the diagram which appear to be most consistent to simple automations are shown in light green. I then created an additional step which I describe as simple with exceptions. Here the majority of decisions needed conform to rules, but a reasonable percentage might also at some point need human decision making, and this percentage will not reduce to zero over time or with the addition of more intelligence. These are in dark green with white text. I've also identified some processes as complicated. Here the process has known unknowns. Relationship between cause and effect requires additional analysis or expertise which are harder to add into any automation. And considerable action is needed to establish facts, analysis and apply good operating practice. Actually, AI and machine learning should cope particularly well in these situations because the technologies are able to look at all sequence of moves and make decisions quicker and more accurately than a human can, if a human can even do the task. Examples here include processes that require an engineer, an analyst, a lawyer or other expert. But it may be expensive to create the automations and even perhaps prohibitively so into the medium term. It will immediately be noticed that there are no boxes in this third red colour to identify them as complicated, and this is because the only process identified that I could see tended to be one part of larger and more complex and more simple processes, so they just don't show up on the diagram. A good number of the boxes are white. In these areas, one of three things is most likely true. Number one, no major opportunities for automation. The process or activity just doesn't really require it. Two, the process is used by a single person or a small group, for example, the strategy team. The return on investment is reduced by the size of the group affected, or it's just not enough financial benefit, at least in the short term. And I say this because very intelligent automations may bring other financial benefits in future, so it may be that this changes over time. Or lastly, a good amount of the process involves human creativity, so automation is likely to reduce rather than be additive in its benefits, again, at least in the short term. I do hope that this insight was useful, and I apologise for the very complex diagram, but hopefully you were able to follow. I do hope that you will download the one-pager and that you get something out of it. Thank you very much.